And welcome back to Culture Crossroads. It is time for the rundown. This rundown with R.C. Williams. Fine soul today, my friend. Good to see you. How you doing?
Brother Andrew, great to see you. Great to be back for another week on the Culture Crossroads. Slow news day, I take it.
Yeah, I'm not at all fired up. I don't know if you could tell. I'm very even keel. This is me on like 7 Valium, right? No, not. I'm just kidding. For crying out loud. Anyway, but really, this is a betrayal. First story for the rundown. It's the betrayal of the Florida GOP, our legislature. And it also tells you too, now, and again, I guess I should say this. We didn't, and anybody who watched the show over the past couple of years knows there were things we've been critical about DeSantis about. I'm not a fanboy of any politician, okay? But I do support most of his work as governor, and I would like most of that to continue. I think it's good for the state, for crying out loud. It was, and we responded. He went from it wasn't even a 1-point victory over Gillum in 17 going into 2018 for his first term to a 10-point victory later on and a 20-point nationally in the election in 2024. And the Republicans are like, no, never mind. We don't want that. In fact, we want to do everything to screw you and take it back. It's just unbelievable. It's like eating soup with a fork with the GOP. I don't understand, but your reaction.
Yeah, politics is that game, Andrew. And you've said it. We call it straight down the line. DeSantis got the same treatment as Trump did. We were critical of him with SB 7050, Florida Strange Fruit. But I have to be honest, Andrew, of the things that he's been right on, he was bang on with what President Trump wanted to do here and getting it done. And what you're seeing now, because you mentioned him being a lame duck, talking about Governor DeSantis, is people jockeying for position. Wilton Simpson's real desire, obviously, is to be the next governor of Florida. Personally and professionally speaking, I think he just committed career suicide, and likely Byron Donalds ends up being the next governor of Florida. That's for another show. But when you start to think about the connections here, it gets a little squishy, right? So Daniel Perez, new House Speaker, Ben Albritton, new Senate President, Wilton Simpson, AG. In what world does it make sense to take power away from the sitting governor when you're all supposed to be on the same side? And supposedly you all want the same thing. What sense does it make to take the power of immigration away from the governor's office and give it to the agriculture director in the state? People who don't live in Florida don't understand that the director of agriculture in the state of Florida has a lot of power, including what happens with gun permits and things like that. But they also control agriculture, which is where a lot of the people who are in here illegally end up working. Now, Wilton Simpson has been a fanboy of Big Sugar, amongst other things. Where this gets strange and has really bad optics, Andrew, is that Wilton Simpson stands to benefit, and his friends stand to benefit greatly from this agreement. So now you ask the next logical question. Yes, DeSantis is a lame duck, but what in the hay do these people have up their sleeve for our state? And by the way, are they even red anymore?
They clearly want to take it back to like the Rick Scott, Jeb Bush version of Florida, which is we're beholden. I mean, wouldn't you think we're beholden to these special interests? And when you know too that big ag, I mean, Florida is actually a big ag state, and we're a big ranching state. And people don't, they think Miami and the beach, but we're actually a lot more agricultural and rural for most of the state of Florida. And we produce in that way. But here's the other thing too, because again, these tentacles run deep and the world gets smaller and smaller because, as you know, who is the majority owner of big ag in America? It's Monsanto. Monsanto, what do they run? Well, they produce pharmaceuticals, don't they? So again, we're all coming back. It's big pharma, it's big ag, and big marijuana. I believe that Amendment 3, which did go down this last time in Florida, but I think they were more ticked about that than Amendment 4, saying no to constitutionalized abortion in Florida, because I think they see big marijuana as another financial boondoggle. And clearly, if we can have open borders, well, gosh, we got a great supply, don't we? And we have people who will bring it across. I mean, if I'm on that team, because there's got to be a benefit to doing this. There's no benefit to doing this when you're looking at it from the like an American citizen perspective. You're destroying our neighborhoods, you're destroying our states, you're destroying our country. Why would you want to destroy something that you want to quote unquote lead or be elected to serve, unless you have a whole different constituency and a whole different customer base, so to speak, and a whole different economy that you want to usher in, and we, the ones who exist, are actually in your way.
Andrew, you said it earlier during your monologue that they've finally taken off their masks. You've got two sides of the same coin here. Nikki Fried and her boyfriend, with Amendment 3, were trying to block everyone except them and choice others from getting a license for marijuana in the state and jacking the cost so that they could line their pockets. I want our viewers to keep something in mind. If you do not live in the state of Florida, this is a use case for you as to what's eventually going to happen in your state. And Andrew, this is a big reason that Watchman Action exists, because talking to our friends locally, we know a lot of the same people. We've said, look, these people need to be called out and they need to be primaried in their next election. If you want to do that effectively, you've got to be able to aggregate people, focus on an issue, and then deliver the information in such a way that the populace who is asleep will get active leading up to something like a primary and then in a general election. The reason they keep doing this, Andrew, the reason that Albritton feels empowered, Perez feels powerful, Simpson feels empowered, is not just because DeSantis is a lame duck, is because they know that the people in general either A, aren't paying attention, or B, don't have enough muscle to do anything about it because they've got big lobby in their pocket. I will share this with them. Today is a new day, and that train is just about to run off the track. So you guys should probably get ready for what happens in 2026 and 2028 when you ultimately get primary.
And this is also a warning, because in what is called the free state of Florida, if this kind of thing was bubbling right beneath the surface, and I mean right beneath, I mean right after Ron DeSantis, then all this nonsense was still there. Mm-hmm. What about in all the other red states? What opportunity are they waiting for to do these things again? You know they will, because it's the GOP is one party. It's the uniparty anyway. I'll give you the last word on this topic, and then we'll move on.
Andrew, they have been emboldened. I'm so glad you brought that up. Other states, it's like the radicalized cell was in the quote unquote free state of Florida. And now all of the other red states have their marching orders. Texas just changed its Speaker of the House to someone who I'd call cattle squishy. And our politicians here in Florida are like gator squishy. You've got to keep an eye on these people. Who's watching the watchers? That's the governance portion that we, the people in a self-governing society, have to focus on, Andrew. We're out of time, and these guys have probably set off a bomb.
Oh my goodness, a lot more on that. And yeah, we've got a couple years to do that. The primaries, the midterms, they're going to matter big time coming up here. So, all right, next story. This from the Wall Street Journal headline: as a rising political star, Tulsi Gabbard paid to mask her sex ties, that is SECT, her sex ties to an alleged scheme. From the article, to defend and burnish Tulsi Gabbard's image as her political star was rising, her congressional campaign hired a public affairs firm in 2017 that tried to suppress coverage of an alleged pyramid scheme connected to her Hindu sect, according to interviews, emails, and Federal Election Commission records. RC, this caught your eye. Tell us why.
Yeah, Andrew, you know, we interviewed Trevor Loudon a while back on Tulsi Gabbard. He sounded like a red alert. He's like, there's a problem here. You know, Trevor has spent an extensive amount of time and has written a number of books where he's looked at every member of Congress and figured out their ties to communism or the CCP. And Tulsi Gabbard came up on his radar for her connections to the CCP, but she's also been on our radar. And we work to do this in fairness, Andrew, because Sherlock is a market research firm. But being honest, Tulsi Gabbard came on our radar back in 2020 with some of these strange connections to the science of identity movement. This is that kind of Hindu offshoot. And the guru of it, who she refers to as like a Dev Gara, is a former Hare Krishna member. And her parents and her had this allegiance to him, which included strange things like putting his toenail clippings in their food and worshiping his shoes to show loyalty. So these are things that give you pause. Now, in all transparency, Andrew, I was someone who was raised Baptist, converted to Buddhism for 25 years, and converted back. Here's the key to that. I understand and I can clearly explain why I was turned off by the church, why I came back, and now why I preach about the gospel actively. What is interesting about Tulsi in this instance is that while in this story, and the Wall Street Journal went pretty lengthy, it is a bit slanted because it's timed for Tulsi Gabbard's hearings this week. The thing that it did point out is that she didn't say no. And that should give people pause. And I think what you're going to see, or you have seen in her hearing so far, is that folks on the Senate side who do not want her confirmed are going to pull on that string. And it's going to be hard for her to convince people that she's still not associated with this when apparently she was blessed and given a certain level of access when she hasn't just come straight out and said, I'm not part of that. I'm not part of that anymore. Here was the issue. That's going to raise concern. And credit to Trevor Loudon, and you can find this interview that we did with him on watchmanaction.org. He was bang on about her and the things that we need to be on the lookout for.
Do you think that, I mean, you know, we look at these quote unquote scandals or quote unquote ties, you know, we see it every confirmation hearing, we have it in every political campaign. And I think yes, it goes to character, but one of the more important questions is, well, how is that going to affect, or how did it affect their execution of the responsibilities of their office? How does this tie to how a Tulsi Gabbard might fulfill her position?
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, the director of national intelligence is at the center of the surveillance apparatus, right? So the level of access that she has to information, your ties or your allegiances are critical. And look, there are some things in life that you can do as a private citizen that nobody really cares, right? But when you're dealing in something like this, you are certainly going to get scrutiny. If it was you or I that were testifying before the Senate, I would fully expect them to peel back the onion and say, well, Mr. Williams, you know, on this date at this time, you were affiliated with this group. Why did you never deny it? So that's part one. Part two is the competence part. There was a prior meeting that Tulsi was in where she was struggling with information that I guess would be generally known for a director of national intelligence. She was struggling to connect the dots on something. When you combine that with some of her other ties, in particular a trip to Syria, there are questions there. So there is the side of it that is, let's say, political or association, but then there's the competence side. And ultimately, I wonder, in getting through this process, the level of capability there, or is this simply a stepping stone to something else?